What's going on, everybody? It's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and with all the trademarks and patents and whatnot flying about these days, I want to talk a little bit about it from a different side of it. There's many people out there who are throwing their opinions into the situation, and while a lot of it is just hopes and dreams and pipe dreams and pie in the sky, and obviously a lot of it is a benefit, I'm going to look at it from more of a real world and realistic aspect. Now, what am I talking about? Well, we all know recently that there's been patents filed, whatever it is, about Sony and backwards compatibility. Now, of course, this has many things to do with what Microsoft have actually done, because the Xbox One, the Xbox One S, and the Xbox One X can now play backwards compatible games of, I believe the list is nearly 500 games long, from the Xbox 360, as well as the OG Xbox 180, which is a feat within itself to an extent. More so about the Xbox 360 than the original Xbox. I'll get to that later in the video. But many people speculate that the whole backwards compatibility filings from Sony and the patents and whatnot could hint that they're actually developing internal resources, internal teams, and internal emulators and stuff to actually run PS1, PS2, and even possibly PS3 games on a PS4 via backwards compatibility software. Now, I don't think this is properly the case. There is a hint to it, but I'll get to that now in a minute. So, let me go back and talk about the Xbox side of it just for a second, because we want to talk about architecture. This is something important that comes into play regardless of what platform, as long as backwards compatibility is involved. So the Xbox One, Xbox One S, and Xbox One X all use standard PC-based hardware, which is x86 architecture. Now, that's all well and good because like the PC stuff, like the PS4 as well, and the PS4 Pro, they all use the relative same architecture. It's very easy to code for, very easy to develop for, very easy to optimize for, at least in comparison to everything else. And at the same time, only small modifications are needed to port from one system to another that uses the same architecture. Of course, I'm not trying to downplay the skill and whatever involved in this, the talent and knowledge needed to do so. It's just much easier as a comparative basis compared to, say, porting to a different platform that uses a different architecture. And when it comes to backwards compatibility, if there is a difference in architecture, it actually causes more development time, and you have to actually develop a proper emulator to emulate the different architecture, which is very difficult, or it's a lot more difficult than just porting to the same architecture. A perfect example of this is the Xbox 360 while running on Xbox One backwards compatibility. Now, I know it's all over the place here, but I'm trying to keep it as straightforward as I can. So when you come to the Xbox 360, that used PowerPC based architecture, which they have to develop a properly running emulator, a properly running software emulator for the Xbox One to make that run properly. That, of course, like I said, is very difficult. Now, they've managed it. Obviously, it's on a game per game basis at this point, but it's getting there. It's getting there. It's even better every time. They're adding more and more games all the time, and they're refining it as we go. Now, when it comes to the OG Xbox, the Xbox 180, it's actually not as impressive as you may think. Now, I'm not downplaying the whole situation, but it's not as impressive as you may think to get those games backwards compatible on Xbox One. The reason for that is the OG Xbox actually used PC-based hardware and x86 architecture, just like the Xbox One, the Xbox One S, and the Xbox One X do. Now, of course, I'm not downplaying the ability and the stuff needed to actually get that done and get it working. It's just, it blows people's minds when they hear, oh my god, LG Xbox. There's a reason why it's possible and why it's not as difficult as it may seem. And that, of course, is what we just listed. Now, let's leave the Xbox aside. I was just using that as the example to kind of set the standard as we go. Let's look at the PS4 and all the trademarks, the patents and all filed by Sony. So these ones have always just listed stuff as backwards compatibility. Now, it's always been pretty vague, but many people have taken it to assume that there's going to be PS1 emulators, PS2 emulators, and possibly even a PS3 emulator brought to the PS4. Now, I don't think this is the case. Now, there's of course evidence for and against it, because when you look at it, PC has had x86 based emulators for the PS1 and PS2 for literal decades. So x86 emulators do exist for those two platforms. The PS3 is a whole other story, because that uses its own crazy cell-based architecture, which is an absolute bitch to work with. On the flip side as well, Sony obviously have a couple of PS1 and PS2 emulators running as it is. There's a software PS1 emulator in the slim PS2s. There's a software emulator of PS1 and PS2 on the PS3. There's a PS1 emulator on the Vita/PSP. That's also a really good one. Just like the ones on PS3 for that matter. And hell, even on the PS4, there is actually technically a very, very limited game per game basis PS2 emulator. Of course, that's not proper backwards compatibility on there because you still have to buy all your games, but you see my point. Now, moving along, why I think everyone is wrong when they're looking at this the wrong way is I think what's going to happen with all these trademarks and filings and whatnot is when the PS5 comes out, I think that is going to have backwards compatibility. Now, there's a couple of caveats with that as well. Many people will take that as PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and PlayStation 4 games will work on the PS5. Now, I don't think that's the case whatsoever. The way I think how it's going to work is while it is very, very possible that the PS1, the PS2, and the PS4 games will work easily on the PS5, the PS3 is a whole other story because like I mentioned with the architecture, the quality of the emulation all out there at the moment is absolutely nightmarish. But I think it's going to be down to a more marketing side of it that a lot of people have overlooked. Now, because of the Xbox One family and the PS4 family all being x86 based architecture, as long as you use newer, upgraded hardware with the same architecture in the same vein, which is pretty much what's guaranteed to happen, and why the manufacturers have moved over to development processes and hardware like this, is they can essentially just plop in new hardware along the same lines in a new console every 5 or 6 years, and it pretty much just automatically work. This is what's happened on PC for about 20 or 30 years now. So years ago when I bought dual GeForce 7900 GTX cards with 512 video RAM each, I know what a time we live in, and I put them into my computer at the time, I could play games and I could play them well. Then years later when I bought a GTX 690, I could use the additional power without any modifications because it's the same architecture. I could play the same games I did before and they would benefit from all the extra power. Fast forward a few years again, when I bought a GTX 1080 Founders Edition, the same deal. I could play all those previous games without any modifications at all, and then I could get use of the additional power. I think this is what's going to happen with the PS5 in relation to this trademark for backwards compatibility. What I realistically think is I think they're going to advertise PS4 backwards compatibility. They could obviously dedicate manpower and resources to putting on the PS1, PS2, PS3 emulators, if the PS3 emulator is even possible, but I mostly think it's just going to be advertising PS4 backwards compatibility. You are going to have, by the time it comes out, probably over 100 million install base of PS4 users. And to let them know that they can either pop their discs right in and play a better performing, better visual, better whatever version of the game that they already own, or download a digital version of something they've already bought digitally from the PSN and get the same benefits. I think that's the main thing here. Now, granted, this is all standard fare for PC-based hardware and x86 architecture, but it's marketing. That's the big thing. When the PS5 comes out, naturally they will be able to say, oh, we have PS4 backwards compatibility with all your favorite games from that generation. That's obviously a very big plus, mainly because when you look at the Xbox One, they've been throwing that around as well. They've been saying stuff like, play all your games from all our different platforms, or at least play a lot of your games from all our different console platforms. And they throw backwards compatibility at Sony now and again. And of course, you do have people out there, PlayStation fans, who are legitimately wanting backwards compatibility. I know I have tons of PS1, PS2, and even PS3 games, and I would like to be able to play them on my PS4. It's an additional extra feature that would be nice. But overall, at the end of the day, while I do think, or while I do hope, I should say, that PS1, 2, and 3 backwards compatibility would come to the PS5, I'm realistically just expecting it to be PS4 backwards compatibility because of the same architecture and the same hardware. That's what I'm expecting. Hopefully I'm wrong and they do include PS1, 2, and 3 in there as well. But realistically, I'm just expecting PS4, possibly even taking advantage of the extra hardware in there. Games with unlocked frame rates will run even higher. You might even get higher resolutions in games with digital resolution shaders. But that's my whole thing on the situation. But where do you stand on it anyway? When it comes to the trademark filing for backwards compatibility from Sony, do you think it's for the PS4 possibly getting emulators? Do you think it's for the PS5 getting emulators? Do you think it's for the PS5 just going to run PS4 games? What's the deal? Let me know all of that, as well as what one you would prefer and why, in the comments section below. Hit the appropriate button to let me know how I did on the video, and while you're at it, why not hit the subscribe button and even ring the little notification bell. Granted, getting a notification from YouTube in current year about a live stream or a video upload is a whole other story, but hey, at least you can say you tried, am I right? As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the rest of the videos in my channel.